blessed morning. Thanks be to God for another day. It's real early over here in Florida. But man, I just wanted to share something with you guys, man. Um, this isn't like a Bible study, or anything. I don't have time to do that right now this morning. But I wanted to share something with you that's been sitting on me for. I've kind of been pondering on it for the last few hours, and it's been something that's kind of come up to me several times. But this idea, man, of just this idea of where the church, I won't say where the church is as a whole, but where some of us, I notice some of us as believers are, and it's a big issue, and it's the issue of there's two sides to this coin. One of the issues is you have super duper intellectualism and systematic religion within the Christian faith. Um, and then you have on another spectrum of people who are hyper allegorism and spiritualism in the Christian faith. And then there's kind of like this mindset of people feeling like one side is better than the other. One side feels like book, chapter, verse, and super kind of like in some ways kind of Pharisaic to the point where there's no room for joy. There's no room for um, you know, spirituality, if that makes sense. It's kind of just like academics only. And there's a danger in that because, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and all these different groups all shared a common issue. And that common issue was that, they were so systematic and dogmatic in their approach to serving God that they were not able to hear Christ. When Christ showed up, many of them were not able to hear him because they were just so dogmatic in their views, so cemented in their views that they weren't willing to hear Christ. They weren't willing to hear anybody that didn't affirm what they thought. And then on the other side of this spectrum is you have people who are very spiritual and very like sensitive spiritually to the point where they don't really have a foundation of biblical truth. And so, and some of that's due to what they're taught. Sometimes it's due to not having a good structure around you. And so you have people who may have good morals and good values, character and all of that, but they have not been formally trained. And so as a result, they're teaching false doctrine. And so the good part is you're taught to be sensitive to the voice of God and be sensitive to the Spirit of God. But the danger is if you do not have a foundation of truth, then you don't really know how to discern God's voice. Um, you don't really know Him through His Word. And so as a result, everything that you do and everything that how you operate is all based off of what comes to you. And what I mean by that is like, usually you'll hear people like this say, I feel like God is telling me this, and I feel like God is showing me that, and I feel like God is saying that. And not to say God does not speak, because he does, and not to say that God does not move us and unction us to do certain things, because he does. But if those unctions are inconsistent with God's core values that he shows us, his character, if it's inconsistent with his word previously revealed, if it's inconsistent with who we know God to be and how he operates, hello, then the danger is that basically the voice in your own head becomes God. And scriptures kind of become a reference point to kind of solidify your own feelings about what you're hearing in your head and feeling in your heart and stuff like that. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is to encourage both sides of the aisle to pursue a deeper relationship, to fill in those gaps, pursue those pursue a deeper relationship with God that results in filling in those gaps and those blind spots, because we all have them. I'll use myself as an example. I grew up in the UPCI, in the Pentecostal church, or one sect of the Pentecostal church. And we were a very kind of isolationist type group, where we had our own conferences, we had our own services, we had our own preachers, we had our own style of music, we had our own colleges. Everything was within our bubble. And so it made it very easy for you to kind of be a separatist, because everything that you thought everything you would need would be in this bubble that you've created for yourself. So that would cause for us to kind of be afraid to engage the outside world. And that was a dangerous mentality, because when you only hear your type of preachers, and you only hear your interpretation of scripture, and you only hear your style of preaching, and you only hear your style of church, and you only experience that, and you're taught that everything else outside of that is not of God, or it's a deviation or a watered down version of that, then it creates this kind of prideful mentality. And I would liken it to kind of like the church in Corinth that Paul rebuked. They were fruitful in spiritual gifts, but they were immature. Fruitful in spiritual gifts, but they didn't know how to operate in spiritual gifts in a healthy way. They were trying to exalt themselves above others on the basis of what spiritual gifts they had. They were trying to exalt themselves above one another on the basis of who baptized who, which Paul condemned as immature and childish. And so I came up in an organization very, very similar, and similar to that. And I'm not saying every person in that organization was like that, but the core attitude was very similar to that. And so it took God really doing a work on me and getting me out of that. It took me years to really come up out of that. And I'm grateful to the Lord for it. And I'm still a work in progress. I no longer identify as a Pentecostal. It's been, dang, 8 years, 8 years or so since I left out of that type of sect of Christianity. And I would say it had been, at least physically, left. And it has been, I don't know, probably 10 years since I've kind of checked out of it. And then maybe, shoot, 10 years. Yeah, I'll say it's been about 12 years, or 14 years since I started to question that stuff. As I begin to study and read the word for myself, I begin to question all of that stuff and hold it up to the standard of God's word. And so this is what I would encourage for anybody who is seeking. I want to encourage you to search for truth. I want to encourage you to search for truth. If you're a part of a Christian denomination, whether you're Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Baptist, Catholic, whatever it is that you're a part of, I want to encourage you to do what the scriptures say, to study to show yourself approved. I want to read something to you that I read this morning in the scriptures. It really ministered to my soul. Right here in Acts chapter 17, is Paul was in, let me see here, Thessalonica, and he travels from Thessalonica to Berea. And it says right here in verse 10 of chapter 17 of the book of Acts, it says, as soon as it was night, the brothers and sisters sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. Upon arrival, they went into the synagogue of the Jews. It says the people here were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, since they received the word with eagerness and examined the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Consequently, many of them believed, including a number of the prominent Greek women as well as men. So these believers, these brothers and sisters, searched the scriptures, they examined them, and they received the word eagerly. That's what I encourage um, you, brothers and sisters, wherever you are, whatever denomination you're in, whatever sect of Christianity you're in, even if you're identified as a Muslim, even if you identify as a Muslim or you identify with another religious group, I want to encourage you to study and research what you believe and why you believe it with open ears and open eyes. Don't come to it with your own presuppositions. Don't come to it with your own preconceived notions. Come to it with an open heart. Let God reveal. Let God speak to you. Let God minister to you. That's how we grow. When we're willing to put what we think up to the test and we're willing to search for truth, that's how we grow. So that's why I said study to grow, not to show. The goal is not for us to become the most learned in the room just so we can say we know a lot. The goal is for us to grow. God has intended for us to grow through his word, through fellowship with him in his presence and prayer, through fellowship with his church, the body of believers, to fellowship and grow. That's what God's intent is. It's not for us to just learn a lot of information, but it's for us to grow as people so that we may mature spiritually, mature as persons. You know how we become good fathers? We become good fathers by fathering and by learning and by listening. The way we become good husbands is by being a good husband, learning, listening, going through challenges. The way we become good believers is by being challenged. We don't become good believers in isolation. We don't become good believers simply by reading about being a good believer all day. There has to be research connected with application that can help us grow. So that's my encouragement for you guys this morning. I know it's not a Bible study. I know it's not something super duper deep for you guys, but that's my encouragement for you guys is to study to grow. And then as you're studying, approach, studying with an open heart and an open mind. Approach the things of God with an open heart, a genuine open heart to learn the truth, not to affirm what you believe, but to learn the truth. That's my encouragement for you. Be open, be willing to be challenged, be willing to challenge yourself, be willing to lay down your own perspectives and opinions on stuff in the face of truth. That's my encouragement for you guys. God bless y'all. Peace out.